Yesterday we were ready to go.
Diesel leak.
And we had to say stop very quickly.
We've done this test.
Then we lost the wind altogether.
Undecided as to whether we anchor on the east side or the west side.
And tried to furl the foresail, but she wouldn't close.
Diesel leak. Let's talk about the diesel leak. So this is something that has developed over the last couple of months, I suppose. Underneath our bed are our two tanks, port and starboard. No, port and starboard. There we go. We're looking backwards. And the two tanks have this connecting stainless pipe. Okay, so it fills in on this tank and then obviously it feeds that tank down there. The problem we have is that if you see there, that's where it's bolted into the fiberglass tank with bolts, stainless bolts, and in between that stainless there and the tank is a rubber flange, and over time that has disintegrated and it's been dripping down in there and ended up in the bilges, which is not great, so just got to clean it up. Now the problem is that in order to properly repair this, we need to empty the tanks first of the diesel. We then need to take out the calorifier, which is the water heater here, and then obviously unbolt that pipe to take it off in order to put a new flange on. What I've done, just temporarily, because this is a job that I really want to do when we're on the hard, I don't really want to do it when we're in the water. So in the meantime, what I've done is I've actually tightened up the bolts, and that seems to have stopped a little bit of the leak. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to run some gasket sealant, which is impervious to diesel, and just run a bead of that around there, and that should hold it up, I'm hoping, until we haul out further up the coast.
Yesterday we were ready to go. We had the lines ready to land back on the boat, just about to leave the marina, had the engine on, and we had to say stop very quickly because we had an alarm on our instrument panel saying that we had 15 plus volts coming into the batteries, and if anyone knows anything about batteries, that's not a good thing. So engine off, checking the batteries, the alternator. This is the third thing in the equation. This is the alternator to a battery charger. It's a Sterling. We've used it for some time. It's great. And what it does is it regulates the voltage that's coming from the alternator, so it might amplify it if it feels the batteries need more, and it will reduce it to a trickle charge once the batteries are fine and finished. So this was what we thought, what Jamie thought it probably was, but you can't jump to these conclusions, so he had to do a number of tests beforehand.
Really simple test with a multimeter. Make sure that you've disconnected your battery cable from the alternator and turn your dial all the way down to your continuity test, and this is the one where when two wires touch it sounds an alarm. So all you do is you place one cable on the housing of the alternator and one cable on the B plus terminal, which is the positive terminal on the alternator. And in theory what should happen is if you press it one way you'll get nothing, and if you swap the cables over, there we go, you'll get a change. So what this is showing is that the diodes are working, they're only allowing that continuity to run one way. And so we've done this test and it seems as if the alternator, the diodes within the alternator are working as normal. So again, this is pointing towards a problem with the Sterling. After 1 week, and 1 week only, it's pretty good, we have received our new Sterling unit. Going to take it apart and put it on, and fingers crossed, hopefully we should be good to go. The Sterling is pretty straightforward. It takes power from the alternator, which goes to the positive in, there is a negative there. And then you have the ignition feed. If your alternator is the type that needs to be excited in order to start generating electricity, then what this does is it sends a feed back from the starter circuit to the alternator to start exciting it. And then you just have two outs, one for your domestic and one for your starter battery, and that is pretty much it. The only other thing you have to do is to change the dip switch in here, which tells the Stirling which type of battery you have, whether it's flooded lead acid or so on. So we have to turn this one down here before we start it up again. Okay, unit is installed. Well, I've wired it up. It's not back in its position just in case something is wrong. So turn the shore power charger off. Currently we have minus 10 amps going in at 13.72 volts. I'm now going to ask Liz, do you want to turn the engine on?
Do the honours. Here we go.
Okay, first thing that happens is the lights on the Stirling come on, but it goes into a pause mode to begin with. So all the lights come on, it will give a voltage reading, which is that little orange light there, which tells us the volts are about 14 volts or so. And then there's the boost button, which is the green one at the end here. Now that flashes for about 15 seconds. In the meantime, let's just check to see what's happening up here. We have 16 amps going in. Obviously the batteries are fully charged, we've been on shore power. Currently the voltage is 14 volts, as you can see, and obviously that will creep up until it hits about 14.8. Should hear the pitch of the alternator change slightly, and when that happens, there we go, we are now at 14.8 volts, and it appears to be stabilizing. What it's actually doing at the moment is charging the starter battery first. That's one of the things the Stirling does, gives priority to the starter battery. But that seems to be a functioning, working unit, and we are good to go. The wind dropped, so we tried to put the head sail away. As you can see, we have had to take it down. There appears to be a problem. We've known about this for a while. The halyard at the top was wrapping. Now, we used to have halyard wrap some years ago, and we put a bullseye in at the top which helps feed the halyard, so it shouldn't in theory be wrapping. We've taken it down and applied some tension on the furling mechanism and tried to turn it, and it definitely seems to be getting stuck. I will show you what I mean. So Liz is just going to give it a clean with some washing up liquid and some hot water. But essentially you have the furling mechanism is made of two pieces. The one that's attached to the sail at the bottom, and then the one at the top. And what's happening is when there is strain on the top halyard, it pulls it up. And if you imagine those two pieces get pulled apart effectively, but if the bearings are good, then it should turn nicely. But when we apply that pressure on the halyard and try and turn it, we can feel it sticking. So we did change these bearings in the refit, so they're only 3 years old or so, but we're going to give them a clean.
Here we are plodding along from Pankor to Penang and motor sailing, because of course the wind is on the nose most of the time, although we did manage at one stage to put the foresail out and the mainsail, and we got a little bit of help along the way. Then we lost the wind altogether and tried to furl the foresail, but she wouldn't close, so we had to bring it down, clean it all up, just check it all through, and then re-thread it and put it up. We couldn't show you any of that because it's a two-man job. Anyway, foresail is now away safely and securely, and we are not that far from Penang.
Sailing again. So nice to be getting all the sails out, and we've got about 8-9 knots on the beam, doing about 5.5 knots, which is quite respectable. A little bit of cloud over there, but it's been a mixed bag today. Well, we're not too far from Penang now. We're going to be anchoring off a tiny little island just on the south of Penang. Can't really decide where to anchor because we're in the northeast monsoon. We've had these easterly squalls, but the wind today has all been coming from the northwest, which is actually quite normal. There's very little fetch at the moment, so it'll be interesting to see what kind of sea state we have on either side of this little island. So undecided as to whether we anchor on the east side or the west side.
Check it.
Arrived pretty much at Penang, and we're going to stay overnight we hope at Kendi, this little tiny rock here. And I'm just having a look to see what it's very pretty, really cute. It's just completely covered in rainforest. Nobody lives on it, and I'm just watching. There's a couple of fishermen over here, small fishing boats, and they've got hand lines out. They're supposed to be a bit of a fishing hotspot.
I just realised my face matches my t-shirt. It was quite hot today, and we got a nice little sail in just as we were doing the last couple of hours or so. It was good. I think we've sorted out that head sail as well. Greasing it up with some detergent seems to have sorted it out for the moment. It was a little bit tight furling it away, but we'll give it a really good clean when we next get an opportunity. Anyway, we are now anchored, and this is, as Liz says, a little fishing hotspot. There's quite a few fishing boats dotted around. So we opted to go on the west side. Now, at the moment, as I explained earlier, the prevailing wind is coming from the northwest. So we're effectively being blown onshore. But the thing is that we've been getting a few of these easterly squalls, and there is another one brewing. You can just see the beginning of it just over up there. So and what happens, of course, is that when that kicks in, the sea state gets really confused and rough and horrible, and you end up on a lee shore on the other side of the island. So I figured, knowing the weather, this is an afternoon breeze that we have here, so I suspect it will calm down at night time, and we're on the right side of the island for that. But yeah, it's a new spot. It's always nice to find a new spot, and the real test is to see how well we sleep tonight. We didn't get much sleep last night, so yeah, looking forward to a good night's sleep, but not before a gin and tonic. That's pretty cool, isn't it? Eagles nesting up there, and in fact we just saw one swooping through the trees with something in its talons. Couldn't quite see what it was. Landed in its nest, and even caught a little glimpse of some little heads popping up out the nest. Quite special. Meanwhile, that cloud's getting closer, and in fact if we swing round you can see the north of Penang, which is there. Again, looking a little bit cloudy, but you never know, we might get a nice sunset.
We would take this opportunity just to talk in a little bit more detail about our Sterling. Not everyone is familiar with this particular type of charger. So Sterling is an alternator to battery charger, and it differs slightly to something like a Balmar, which does the same job but does it in a different way. Ultimately they both work, but there are pros and cons.
The Balmar that you mentioned, or Bulmar, that's called an advanced regulator, and what that does is it bypasses the regulator in the alternator. So this actually means having to take the alternator apart and rewire it slightly so that you're using an external regulator. And what that does is it pulls the voltage from the alternator, so it will actually change the voltage on the alternator, acting as an independent regulator, and it pulls the voltage up to match the voltage of your batteries. The Stirling works quite differently. What this does is it sends a load to the alternator, and it tricks the alternator into thinking that there's a load. So its voltage drops, its current increases to its maximum current. It then takes that low voltage high current and amplifies the voltage up again to match the voltage of your batteries. So they are both kind of smart charging, I suppose.
Yeah.
The Stirling kind of tricks the alternator, whereas the Bulmar, or an advanced regulator, is independent regulator.
They both do the job, though, of increasing the longevity of batteries. Isn't that the idea?
Supposedly, yes. And one of the things the Stirling does is it claims to charge at 5 times faster than what your alternator would charge, and it will also desulfate your batteries because it gets that boost as well. Supposedly, this is of course all on paper, but you know, we've had the Stirling for many years and not had a problem with it.
Yeah, you said, I think, somewhere that we've had ours for about 8 years, our system, and it's worked pretty well. And obviously, from what you say, the most useful thing from our point of view is that it's plug and play. There's no mucking around with the alternator, so it's easy as far as spares are concerned. If there's a problem, we just take the old alternator out, put the new one in, and plug the Stirling back in.
Correct. I'm sure many of you out there are perfectly capable of taking your alternator apart and rewiring an external regulator. It's not something I'm particularly comfortable with. I know it's something that a lot of cruisers are not comfortable with. Also, there's the warranty issue as well. So at the moment, of course, we have an engine under warranty, an alternator under warranty. If we start pulling that alternator apart, we void that warranty, so that's another concern. But as you say, ultimately it's a case of if any of the systems go down, you can literally take them out and plug in a new one. I think that Stirling took me about 15 minutes
Yeah, it's really good
to install. They do both have battery and alternator sensing options as well, so they do work in similar ways in that respect. But for us, the Stirling is just a nice simple solution.
Yeah, are we going to carry, obviously we're going to carry a spare alternator on our next big trip. Are we going to carry a spare Stirling as well?
We have one.
Oh, we do?
Yes, because when we got our new engine, we had to upgrade the alternator. We upgraded from 80 amp to 125 amp. The Stirling units, the A to B units that we have, are rated at either 80 amp or 130 amp, I think it is.
Right.
So our spare alternator is our old 80 amp, and that would fit our spare old Stirling unit.
Okay, so the only adjustments would have to be to you're changing the size of the alternator on the engine, so you just have to make some mechanical changes there, but otherwise we would just have a slightly smaller setup.
Correct.
So we've got that already, so that's good news.
Yeah, and we should also add that the Stirling unit, it's strange that it went wrong, but it was covered by an extended warranty. I think it's 3
years.
3 years,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah.
We got in touch with Stirling. They said, okay, the deal is this: you pay for a new one, which they ship out, and then you send back the old one, and if they find that it's a fault with the unit, then they'll reimburse you for those costs. And if you
Right.
remember, that shipping took all of 5 working days from purchase to delivery from
Yeah.
the UK to Malaysia.
Do put your comments below. We do read them all. We don't have as much time as we used to reply to every single one, but when we do get a moment, we try to reply where necessary. I think you wanted to say something about direct emails?
Yeah, so we get a lot of emails. You'd be surprised, but we get emails every single day from you guys, which of course we love reading, but we just don't have time to answer them. A lot of general questions that we've either already answered in previous videos or answers to questions that you can easily find out there on forums. But if you support us on Patreon, we do guarantee a one-to-one communication. It's one of the advantages of becoming a patron, is that if you have general or specific questions, we are always there to answer them. So
Yeah, we answer everything on Patreon itself, on our site, all the comments. We generate quite a little bit of discussion sometimes, but also the one-to-one through the messaging service on Patreon. So become a patron. It's only $2 a month. That's all you need to be sending us, and then you become part of the Follow the Boat Mates team.
and it means that we can put out more content like this, where we'll try and cover some specifics and some technical stuff, which you know, if you're interested in, then send us a comment and we'll be happy to consider it for a future special or an episode.
Yes, so do like, do share, do subscribe. That really does help us get noticed. And I think for now we're just going to say peace and fair winds.